It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders on a Monday. I'm not going to call it Victory Monday. I also don't want to call it Misery Monday. I'm not feeling that way right now, to be honest, Alan. Maybe I will once you answer some of these questions and maybe give your opinions on stuff. Maybe you'll bring me down further than I already am, but I'm pretty even keel right now. I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm good. I was just ruminating on how good Brandon Rossai's introduction is, and that we need them for Morning Rush and for like post game and the other stuff we do.
You know what we needed was Brandon Rossai calling out the defensive signals for the defense yesterday. I think it would have resonated a bit more for them, and maybe there wouldn't have been as much communication issues if he was the one doing it.
Maybe I'll get with Patrick Queen about that and just be like, yeah, you got to, it's down here a little bit more, you got to bring it down. You got to really project. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's all about the performance.
I think it's about the inflection in his voice. I didn't think Patrick Queen had that yesterday, and that's really where the issue started for the defense. Anyways, Alan, let's get into some of this big story of the day. James Daniels out for the season, tore his Achilles yesterday. It seemed like it was pretty significant. You talked to him on the post-game show yesterday about his foot being in a boot. We didn't know the severity of it then. We do now. Going to miss the rest of the season. And Alan, we can talk about the fallout of this, but first and foremost, man, going back, Nate Herbig, Troy Fautanu, now James Daniels. I mean, we had 10 what we felt like quality NFL offensive linemen, maybe the deepest position group of this team within the offensive line. And that depth has been tested, that depth has been depleted, and now you'd be hard-pressed to find that depth because they've used everybody.
5 injured offensive linemen of their top 10 right now. The 3 you named, including Isaac Seumalo and Dylan Cook. I think there is a chance that Seumalo comes back this week. Dylan Cook, I think, still has another couple weeks with that Liz Frank. And I think it's an incredible number of injuries for one position. It's really so fortunate that the Steelers did have so much depth on the offensive line, or there would be no can you imagine if this happened at corner? Can you imagine if this happened at wide receiver? What would be happening? Like that was the one position on the team, maybe quarterback, I guess, where you felt like you could deal with multiple catastrophic injuries, and now they've had more than anyone could have possibly predicted.
Yeah, absolutely. So you looked at the way that this game unfolded without Isaac Seumalo against the Colts. We saw Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick both thrust into starting positions there when we thought we'd see one of them, maybe a rotation. Mason McCormick started the game. He said maybe they'd rotate Anderson in, but then Daniels goes down relatively early in this football game, and it's, from there it's McCormick and Spencer Anderson. So you mentioned Isaac Seumalo hopefully coming back, but I mean, man, like we were saying, the depth's been tested. You've used pretty much everybody in that group. I mean, where do the Steelers turn from here? Is it McCormick, do you think, ahead of Anderson, if it is just one with Seumalo coming back, or which way are you leaning? Which way do you think the organization's leaning?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for right now, it's just the 5 healthy ones, right? With, sure, guys like Calvin Anderson and Ryan McCollum and John LeGlue, the kind of emergency depth. But when Seumalo gets back, I would expect it to be McCormick. I think he's been the better of the two. Especially, I think you'll see like McCormick's a lot better at run blocking than he is pass blocking. And I think we're going to talk about this later, but a part of this game story is that the Steelers just ran into a brick wall over and over again. And I think a big part of that is because they did not trust the offensive line to protect Justin Fields. And this is going to be the whole theme of this show, I think, is that when you can't protect your quarterback, you can't do a whole lot. What you can do is run poorly, throw predictably, and have Justin Fields run around and try to make plays all on his own. And that's pretty much all the Steelers did. That was not it was a better offensive output, but it was not tactically good offensive football. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially to me early on, I thought a lot of second and long runs were being called that I was kind of questioning, but again, they didn't trust that unit up front to necessarily hold up. I mean, I think that kind of goes into even at the beginning of the season when they had the bodies. I was like, I wonder how much Arthur Smith's scheme is going to protect these offensive linemen with what they're going to do and how he's going to call games. I think yesterday it was fairly evident that was the case, as they were trying to protect Justin, but also the offensive linemen themselves and not putting them in true pass sets.
Yeah, a lot of the pass concepts they called were play action. Justin Fields is not that good at play action. It's not like the thing to call for him. It's the thing to call for the line, right? I mean, that's like so much of what they were doing was like, hey, this is a very patchwork offensive line. 3 guys in that line in Anderson, McCormick, and Frazier had, coming into today's game, a combined 6 starts in the NFL. Like, that's not good. That's not good. That's not what you want. And never in that order. Spencer Anderson hadn't played right guard since OTAs. Now, I'm well on the record as saying it's not that hard to switch between offensive line positions, but generally you would want to practice over there once or twice before you did it. And him not being able to do that here because he's been the starter at left guard, and by the way, the top backup at tackle. Like, there's only one Spencer Anderson to go around. You can't put him everywhere. And so I just think, the thing that makes sense to me about their game plan is not about how well it moved the ball or not about how brilliant it was. It was just like, the idea is let's not get anybody killed and let's try to still give ourselves a chance to win the game. They did both of those two things. They fall short in the end, but I think a lot of the things we're going to talk about the rest of this show are going to come back to, this was an offense that did not trust its offensive line to protect its quarterback.
Yep, pretty much everything else in the show except for this one thing that I want to bring up before we get into that. This graphic was flying around today, and basically, I feel like
before we get too much further on
you know what I'm talking about.
I do, but I want to go back to this. James Daniels, probably the end of his Steelers career there, because we had the conversation with him earlier this summer. The Steelers did not engage in contract situation, and now they're going to get this long look at Mason McCormick. So if they think Mason McCormick is the guy, I think he will just assume that starting job going forward. And if they think Mason McCormick isn't any good at the end of the season, I guess maybe they would entertain bringing Daniels back. But I think at that point, you're probably looking at making a different move somewhere else. I don't know. I think this makes it seem pretty likely that this is the end of the road for Daniels. And I think that's obviously it's a terrible way for it to happen, but he's been a pretty good pro and a very good mentor for those young offensive linemen. So that's a tough blow.
I mean, from a compensation perspective to, like, how much do you think that this impacts his free agency to, tear his Achilles in a contract year? Like, I just wonder, does this maybe unfortunately for him, obviously I don't want it to be this way, but I'm just wondering if that maybe puts him more in the ballpark for the Steelers.
Actually, maybe you're right. Maybe it could. Maybe this will make him a more attractive option to re-sign. I don't know. I just think a lot of the times when you get to that end of the road where you're going to let a contract expire,
sure,
it's probably not happening.
And again, that would be kind of dependent on what does Mason McCormick look like in this spot. If he goes out there, kills it, you see progression through the rest of the year, you'd think that was kind of what they were setting themselves up for anyway, by not talking to Daniels, by drafting Mason McCormick. So getting a look at him earlier than expected, he has a chance now to win that job for 2025 and beyond. The thing that I wanted to bring up before we continue on with this like heavy offensive episode was about TJ Watt, because yesterday specifically, and I feel like this happens like anytime the Steelers lose, anytime TJ Watt doesn't make an impact play, people automatically want to throw up the still shots and the clips of him being held and stuff like that. Saw one today even, and I think you replied to it, where it was like 5 still shots of TJ Watt being held. The thing is, 2 of them were the case of what you did an entire episode of Morning Rush on, and we talked about a bit on here. But when he goes for that rip move, automatically wipes it off the table. Can't be held at that point. And people post those all the time. But there was 3 other ones on there. I'll let you go first on this. I have some thoughts that I'd like to add, but you wanted to discuss this, so I'll let you give your thoughts first.
Okay. If you go back and watch this game against the Colts, there are like 2 and maybe a half plays where you would look at it and be like, I think it's really just 2, where you'd be look at it. Because I'll rewatch the game today, and where you would really look at it and be like, yeah, that should have been a flag on TJ Watt. Like, and do those 2 plays matter? Yes. Like in a 3-point game, any one play could be the difference. But like, it's okay to say that the Colts had a really good game plan for dealing with TJ Watt, and TJ Watt did not have a good game. Like, we can admit that to ourselves, right? TJ Watt is really good. He's one of the best to ever do it. He didn't have a very good game, and the Colts did a good job of minimizing him. It does not have to be a conspiracy. It's not about the referees. The referees didn't cost the Steelers anything in that game. Like, it was the officiating is never perfect, but it certainly was not one-sided. And I'm sure the Steelers got away with some holds too. Like nobody's, no Steelers fan is going through their offensive line with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find every single one that was missed as well. Most of that stuff comes out in the wash. It very rarely makes a big difference in the outcome of the game. It probably didn't yesterday. And the Colts just did a really nice job of minimizing TJ. I think you're not being honest if you don't talk about that.
Yeah. And I think that even go again, like Shane Steichen, whether it was the year in Philly where we played them and got blown out last year when we went to Indy, I think they've generally had a pretty good game plan for dealing with this defense under him. So I think you tip your cap to Shane Steichen, you tip your cap to the offensive staff there for that game plan. But also, like, to that point, like how many times holding with the way that fans see it when a jersey is being held, not necessarily impeding a play, stopping a player's progress, like the way that it's supposed to be called in the league. Like, I think a lot of people that have an issue with this or, posting those still shots, talking about it being specifically TJ Watt, don't watch enough non-Steelers football to see that this happens in every single football game and goes uncalled. I mean, if I wanted to, I could go out there and find those exact same plays for every edge rusher in the NFL being quote unquote held.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably like 3 or 4 a game on average where you look when I rewatched it, where I noticed I'm like, that was a hold. But like they're not. It's not like there's this epidemic of uncalled holds that like just, oh my God, there should be 10 more. My favorite one is you could call holding on every play. No, you just can't. You really can't. You could call it 3 or 4 times more a game than they do if you really wanted to. But I'll be perfectly honest. Like as a spectator, we got too many flags as it is. Let them play. I don't know. I don't want 3 more holding penalties a game. Like I don't like, just let's get on with it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm in full agreement. I think that the biggest thing out of all of this, to be honest with you, is because it looks so egregious because, the guy ends up having TJ in like a headlock is when he goes for that rip move, and not enough people know about that role. And I think that still just isn't on a national spotlight enough where people realize that that's the case. So I think that is honestly probably the number one reason.
One color broadcaster to make a big deal about it in broadcast, and then people be in my mentions forever. Like, it's so funny, dude. Like, I'll have people in the game be tweeting at me stuff. I'm like, what are these people talking about? Like, there was a pass to Pat Freiermuth on a 3rd down where like he wasn't really open. Fields kind of tried to force it in there and it got broken up, right? And like, I had like 9 people in my mentions like, what's with the spacing on that? I'm like, it was a slant. What are you talking about? And like, apparently Adam Archuleta made a big deal about the spacing on that route, but like, he was the inside route. The spacing doesn't matter. There was no one between Justin Fields and Pat Freiermuth. The spacing is only relevant to the 2nd route. Like that, it was man coverage. It did, it was like, but like so many people were like, oh my God, the spacing. Like they even know what that means just because they hear it. Because like, I don't think people understand how much power they give to the TV broadcasters about how they feel about what's happening. It is way too much.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. So the point to take away from that is exactly that. Like when people hear something on TV, they just run with it. But to be honest, like they didn't even, they showed a replay, but it was like so zoomed in on him. I don't even think you saw the rest of the route combinations on that. Like that'd be something on the
all-22. No, you need the all-22 angle to even tell whether the spacing was good or bad or not. But it was a slant against man coverage. It's a gamble. The rest of the unless you wanted to throw it somewhere else, like okay, but like that, it was strange. The spacing could not possibly impact that route. Like it could have made everybody else covered, but that one had nothing to do with it. Pat just didn't get open.
I did hear him say that as well, so that surprised that people kind of ran.
It's so funny to me. Like what I have no idea what people are talking about on Twitter because I'm honestly not listening to the broadcast, and I recommend that you do not either, because you probably don't learn a lot from it most of the time.
I get a 50-50 split, being at the home games, being at home for the
turn down the radio and put on Wolf and Starks. They'll tell you. They'll tell you. They're also not going to admit to any holding penalties. So for any team, that is true. According to Wolf and Starks, no one has ever held anyone in NFL history. They're all erroneous flags.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else on this subject before we move along?
No, let's get back to how bad the offense is.
Yeah, comedy and stuff. By the way, and I appreciate this. First off, you're going to see why at the beginning of this comment, but they actually originally listened to the podcast from Spotify and then found their way to the YouTube channel from there. So they say, "Hey, Alan and Zachary, love the show. Glad I found the podcast on Spotify in the preseason. You guys have the best takes and information that I've found on Steelers-based podcast." All right, right off the bat, there you go. That's how you get your comment or question read on the show for people that are taking notes at home. My question for you is this: why is it the Steelers offense doesn't seem to click until they have to? Like, they seem conservative in the play calling until they have to try to make up for a slow start, which doesn't happen often, but as we saw yesterday, that was the case every once in a while. And then they have to start going for bigger plays, taking more risks. I think we've seen that Justin Fields has the ability to make throws down the field pretty accurately, has a big arm. I know they are lacking in the wide receiver room, but they've been able to, but I think they should have been able to open up more than they have. Just my thought. Thanks.
Well, first of all, great question. And thank you for coming to find us on YouTube to leave a comment after initially listening on Spotify. And I'm sorry that you had to look at our faces in order to do that, because there's the one significant downside. Look, the Steelers are telling you, me, and the rest of the league that they don't think their offense is very good. Like, I just think that's it. Like, they don't really trust Justin Fields to not turn the ball over. They don't really trust the offensive line to protect him. They are just trying to have this offense do enough to not lose. And yeah, there are going to be times when they have to do more than that, and then they'll have to change that game plan. But the turnovers, which come from pressure, come from sacks, come from the quarterback getting hit, that's all related. It's not just Fields. It's Fields and the offensive line. That wrecks a game. It just does. And so I thought about this a lot when I was writing my takeaways column today, which, by the way, you should go to SteelersNow.com and click and read so I get paid. How different is this game if Joey Porter Jr. intercepts the first play? And he probably should have. I think he'd tell you he should have. How different is the game? Completely. It changes the entire complexion of the game. And like, that ends up going for a big play for the Colts, but I guarantee Shane Steichen was over there like, "Don't you ever do that again." Like, that was like, coaches don't want that. They don't want the ball 1 millimeter above the defender's fingers for a big play. They want something safe. They want something predictable, reliable, not like, "I think it'll work." And so, yeah, they're not going to take chances that they don't feel like they have to take to win the game. There will be a time and a place where they may have to do that, but if they don't have to, they're not gonna.
And, part of what he said, too, is it doesn't happen often because of how good the Steelers defense typically is. They don't typically get bullied the way that they did yesterday right out of the gate. But that kind of a question popped into my mind. Actually, two did, as I was kind of going through this to kind of get your opinion on. And one of them seems, I guess, kind of obvious, or I think I know what your answer is going to be. But because of this, we know that the Steelers aren't necessarily built to come from behind. I think it was encouraging what they were able to do yesterday and almost being able to do so. But to that point, like, does that almost make them too game plan specific? Like, if the Colts or any other team gets out to the lead that they were able to do yesterday, are you basically burying the Steelers at that point?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think success will breed more confidence. I think what happened in the second half against the Colts will give Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin, and let's be honest too, it's not just the play callers, it's Justin Fields himself. There are plays out there for him to push the ball down the field earlier in the game, and he is not taking them. Like, it's not just them. It's not just top down. Like, there's a play, Derek had it on Twitter, where, like, George Pickens is kind of covered. And I'm like, George Pickens kind of covered is more open than most other people get. Just throw the ball. He'll get it. He'll get it. Just put it where only George can get it, and he'll get it. And I honestly think Fields should be throwing more of those, but that's on Fields, not on anybody else. And so I think it's conservatism from the top down. It's about not trusting this offense not to turn the ball over, because Justin Fields has a history of being very turnover prone, and the offensive line is leaky, which leads to turnovers, and a faith in their defense that they are not going to have to do that much to win. So, I mean, we'll see how that progresses. If they're able to have some success, sustain some success like they did Sunday in those situations where they have to throw the ball. But just look at the receivers. This is not going to be some pass. Like, everyone's like, open up the offense. Yeah. I'm like, to who? Like, what? Like, there's nobody open most of the time. Like, there is. This offense is not going to be good. It's just not. Like, you also can open it all you want. You're just going to turn it over more.
You answered the other thought that I had in my mind, because I know yesterday we talked on post game and I asked you, are you more encouraged about the offense going forward because of what they did in the second half and really kind of the end of the third quarter, but mainly in the fourth quarter of what the offense was able to do? And your answer, generally speaking, was no. I mean, they obviously can't get out of the gate the way that they did, and the way that the Colts are kind of playing defense at that point maybe changes the way that the Steelers are able to go up and down the field. Not saying like full on prevent, but, kind of giving them the yardage as long as you kind of keep them out of the end zone. Steelers were able to make plays to get in the end zone, obviously. But the other part of that I was kind of thinking about too was, and again, you kind of answered that within there, was, does that, if not fully, change your mind about the offense? And this is your opinion, but also maybe how you feel the Steelers will. Like, can a performance like that, at least in the second half, make them have a little bit more confidence at the very least in what the offense is able to do? Because we brought up the example of the 2023 game versus the Texans, where like the first half pretty similar to the way that this game went, but this game didn't turn into the Texans game because the offense was able to at least show some life in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some positives you can take away from it, certainly. Like, that was the most we've seen Fields throw in must-pass situations, and I thought he did okay. Thought he was accurate still. I mean, it's almost hard to talk about the rest of the game without talking about the fumble, because it's like so bad that, like,
yeah, I mean, Calvin Austin's punt sets you up for 3 with the Boswell 3 at the very least. And then you go back bad. 25 yards. Yeah.
And somebody asked, I had a comment on Twitter that was wrong, but there was one part of it that I wanted to address. And it's like, why weren't you this critical of Kenny Pickett? And I was like, do you not remember last year when everyone was like wanting Matt Canada's head on a pike? And I said, the throws are there, the quarterback's refusing to make them. Yeah, I'm saying the same thing now. Like, it's not. But the one thing I will say is, like, yeah, I think when you're talking about a quarterback, like, is anyone mad at Joe Flacco for not running more yesterday? Like, you can only do what you can do. Kenny Pickett's not very physically talented compared to the average NFL quarterback, but he didn't generally do really dumb things. Justin Fields is incredibly talented and also occasionally does really dumb things. I think it's more fair to be critical of someone for making a really poor decision than it is to just over and over again say, hey, his arms is not strong enough to do that. I don't know what else you want him to do. Like, I mean, in that latter instance, it's the team's fault for putting him in that situation, not the players. Right? Like, when Pat Pete was getting torched up and down the field last year in man coverage, like, I'm not going to roast Pat Pete for it. Like, he's out there trying his hardest. It's the defense's fault for putting him in a situation that he clearly can't physically handle. Now, if he was lined up in man when he should have been in zone, like Beanie Bishop did this week, yeah, I'd roast him for it. Like, that's a mistake that is fair to be very critical of, where if a player is just at their physical limitations, I don't know what you want me to say.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. I understand that for sure.
And Justin Fields, and here's the thing, Justin Fields has basically no physical limitations. He's the best athletic quarterback in the entire league. He can make every throw. He throws at 100 miles an hour. He's accurate. He runs fast. Like, he's as good as anybody else, or probably better. So yeah, there's a lot to harp on.
Which is honestly why you mentioned the deep shots to George. Only 3 of his 11 routes that he ran were beyond 50, behind the targets. The 11 targets he got were deep shots. And I'm like, do this more often, especially like early in the game. And again, like, I don't know that it's necessarily the team restricting him. It seems like it's Justin kind of turning those options down. Just let it rip, because he has been so accurate even to that portion of the field. So yeah, I would like to see obviously more from Justin early in the game, but I'm certainly encouraged by what I saw in the back half of that game. Sticking with the offensive side, the other question that we got, and we can expand upon this. I don't want to necessarily just stick within this question, but a lot of people talk about Najee coming out of yesterday's game for sure too. We talked about him on the post game, 13 carries for 19 yards, obviously not good enough. Najee isn't the back for this system, says Wu-Tang Forever, which by the way, love the name. He can't see the cutback lanes like Patterson and Warren can. Patterson had 3 times the yards on half the carries because of vision. That's what it comes down to.
It's very interesting because I both agree with the first premise and then disagree with some that was said later. So I do think Najee Harris is a bad fit for the scheme. And in fact, when we asked Najee Harris at the first day of training camp why the team told him that his option didn't get picked up, he said they weren't sure about my fit in the scheme. So like it's that's very clearly a thing, right? And then he's just not, to me, a very good zone runner. Like he never really has been. I have not seen in his time in Pittsburgh a guy who generally excels. I mean, if the offensive line is just mauling people, great, but he doesn't generally excel as a zone runner. It requires a different level of, I don't know what, feel, vision. I'm probably not the right person to explain it, the difference, but there is a difference between guys that are good at running zone and guys that are good at running gap, power, whatever you want to call it. And he just doesn't seem to be good at it. And I think Patterson has that kind of one touch and go speed that, like, I think really helps. But it's very interesting. When they brought Patterson into the game, they called a bunch of gap runs. They called a trap. They called some kind of way. I didn't look at I didn't try to break down the play, but some kind of pull concept, some kind of wham concept. It was a lot of trapping and movement and like old fashioned offensive line play. So Is Arthur Smith not aware of what Najee Harris is good at? Is the absence of Jaylen Warren forcing their hand in some way? Is this, again, to go back, about the abilities of what the offensive line can block more than it is anything else? Not very many of these guys did a whole lot of power concepts in college. So if you're talking about young players, that's going to be something they're going to have to learn. You know, nobody's trapping in college anymore. Everybody's running zone. I'm painting with a broad brush, but almost everyone is running some kind of zone running scheme in college football. And so there's no Navy offensive lineman in the NFL. But you know, I just think, I don't know what the breakdown is here, but like, right. I think Najee Harris is running the wrong plays. And this happened last year too. It took him till like halfway through the season, I think, before Matt Canada, or maybe it was even until Canada left and it was Faulkner and Sullivan that they really figured it out, that Harris was better with the power stuff and the gap runs, and Jaylen was better with the zone. So Patterson, that is a multi-week injury. You can almost put that in stone. He's not going to be part of the plan for a little bit here. We'll see if they can get Warren back. From what I heard, he probably could have played in this game, but we'll see how he feels going forward. Last week at practice, he was like, guys who are injured are frequently not even at practice. They're in getting training or whatever. And if they are at practice, they're usually like off to the side, kind of doing their own thing, working with one of the members of the training staff, or they're just standing on the sideline watching, doing the thing. And Jaylen Warren was like right in line at the drills, like, I want to go. Like Cordell Patterson was like, get you're hurt. Get out of here. So like, I think he's itching to go. I don't know if they're going to let him, but I don't think he's that far away either.
Yeah, certainly sounds like he's chomping at the bit. I like to comment right under this though, because I feel like he does play into that. You talked about the offensive line, even like there's so many parts of this to all mesh together that make this successful or unsuccessful. In the case that we're talking about here, the comment right under Berg Sports Fan, regular on the channel, by the way, said offensive line has certainly done him no favors, but I think what I notice is other guys being able to at least make something out of nothing. Don't necessarily see that from Najee.
I think this was the first game where I did not see Najee make something out of nothing. I think he's done a very good job of that the first 3 weeks. I think this week I did not see that. I also do not believe for 1 second that Najee Harris is 100% physically.
Yeah, no.
I just don't. I just don't. I'm sorry. You're not going to convince me that a guy who's wearing a sling on Monday is just fine. You're not gonna.
Well, that's why I said last week, I don't remember which day of the week it was, but I was curious, like, okay, had Jalen been 100%, been dealing with absolutely nothing, like, would Najee have been the one maybe to get a week off? I'd like they just determine Najee's healthier.
Or like have his role minimized, like they minimized Jalen the first week he came back from the hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally, just with the state of the running back room, I feel like they probably realized they couldn't afford to do it.
Old friend Nick Faribault picked his prop bet over, and it was like Najee Harris. No, in fact, it wasn't. It was Joe Morrison on our site, but Nick and I were talking about it, and he picked Najee to go over, and Nick was like, I don't think so. Like, what if he doesn't even really play that much? And like, I thought that was a realistic possibility. And honestly, if Patterson stays healthy the way he was running,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much did Aaron Shamplin play? To me, that is the real thing.
Eight snaps or something.
Is it like, why would he be in the game at all if Najee was 100%?
Oh no, 13 snaps. Yeah. Aaron Shamplin.
Why would he be in the game at all if Najee was 100%?
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree. All right. Anything else feel worth mentioning?
No, I don't think so. Covered a lot of ground there.
We did a lot of offensive stuff.
Podcast. We got Tomlin tomorrow.
Yep, Tomlin would guide the ship for tomorrow's episode, of course. And there could obviously be other news stuff. Maybe we find out more about Cordero Patterson's injury and can talk about that on here in the fallout. Maybe know if we got any guys coming back or any other injuries that we don't know about. But until then, Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Sign up for SN Plus. Use promo code Allen10. Get $10 off an annual subscription, which works out to be about $4 a month. All the best stuff. Southside Scoop. DB is going to break down something on, I don't know. Maybe I won't tease it yet. So I don't think that's confirmed yet. All right.
Oh,
I'll let you know, though. It's coming.
Okay. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about, a question or a topic that you would like discussed on the show. Of course, be sure to compliment us first before asking that question or giving us that topic.
Tell us how good looking we are. No, don't do that. That's just obvious that you're just lying. Make it a believable. Make it a believable compliment, right? You love our takes on sports, the theme music, whatever. Just keep it within the bounds of reason.
However, if you would like to compliment my looks, my DMs are open on all social media platforms, so be sure to hit me up over there. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe.
Fantastic broista or whatever you
yes want. I had people telling me I should open up a coffee shop. I mean, there was a lot of great take. Those people, that is the type of energy that I want in the comments of this episode. The same type of vibe that those women were bringing on Saturday is what I need to have happen in the comments for this show. Appreciate that. But like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Leave a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Apple, Spotify, like comedy and stuff found us through originally, Spotify and all that stuff. If you're listening somewhere else, be sure to do that. Find us on TikTok at Steelers Afternoon Drive. And then find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.